We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Hello, welcome to I Be Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm your host, Michelle Harvey. I'm Mason's mom and also caregiver. And today's topic is going to be about
Dual biologics.
Yeah, fun stuff and important stuff, actually.
Yeah,
So, and the way this came about is because I actually talked to a mom this past week whose child was going to be going in for their first dose of double biologics. So they were already on one and another one was being added. So she was kind of scared. You know how we felt like when we first got the news that
when we were out of the hospital at first, and I was on one biologic, it was called Remicade.
yeah,
And like, that's crazy. Being on one biologic was
it felt like
crazy,
a lot.
you know?
And yeah, it was
'Cause
kind of overwhelming.
We never really got we never got biologics before, so it was crazy at first just to have one.
Yeah.
And then when that wasn't working, the doctor put us on something else, which was kind of working. And then they said, well, this is working, but not to the extent we want it to work. So we're going to put you on a second biologic. And when I heard we're going to be on two biologics, I was like,
Yeah, it was kind of like we really had to trust our doctor on that because it was a little nerve-wracking.
Thankfully, one was an injection, one was an
Infusion.
So
yeah.
to get two infusions.
So it just kind of came to my thought this week when we were coming up with our topic for what we were going to discuss was there's probably other moms, other dads, other parents out there who are kind of facing the same thing because it used to be kind of unknown and it wasn't really used. It's fairly new, still a fairly new practice. And so I think there's not a whole lot of information and sometimes it ends up leaving a lot of you feeling very alone. And even for Mason, there's not a lot of other kids that can relate at that level. So it's kind of nice to talk about this. And if your child is on dual biologics or if they're going to be going onto it, there's been discussions. We hope this might be helpful. And as always, we let everyone know that we are not experts.
No, we're not doctors.
Nope, we are just I'm just a parent and a kid over here.
Yeah, Crohn's disease and
Yeah,
caregiver.
and so we're just doing our best with what we've learned along the journey as being a caregiver and being a patient. And we're still hoping in the future here to maybe have a pediatric gastroenterologist on and an adult gastroenterologist. It'd be great to be able to ask questions and maybe ask some of your questions and get really legit answers on the spot. So, but for now, we just refer to online sources where when we need to look up something, we do make sure we look up information.
We want to make sure we have correct information.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about what we think.
Yeah, because that's very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
And have resources.
If you are curious what a biologic is, this episode is not for you.
No. We have another video about what a biologic is.
Right. And that's an episode. I don't know what episode it is, but it's in season 1. And if I'm able to, I will pop that up on the screen for you guys if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to us, just head back to season 1 and look for the episode on biologics. And that'll give you the information on like more of what they are. Yeah, how they're used, how they attack and everything like that. So that's in another episode. So this one is just going to be a little bit more about dual biologics. And so basically, what is dual biologics?
It's you take two biologics instead of just taking one biologic.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. So it's double biologics, dual biologics, however you want to say it. And the typical person with Crohn's disease is going to, if they've elected to do biologics, and which is becoming much more popular in recent years with the advancements made in biologics, they are a great weapon against this disease. And yeah, and you would typically be on one, and you might also be on an immunomodulator, which is something like methotrexate. And so like when Mason was on.
So I was on methotrexate and then I was on prednisone.
Right, but you're also on Remicade.
Remicade too, yeah.
So the Remicade was paired with the methotrexate, and the
They weren't.
methotrexate was paired with folic acid.
Yeah. So
No,
it helps, but
but
it
methotrexate does help some people. They're like
yeah.
only on that too. Some of you may only take that, but that's just an example of immunomodulator that's usually mixed with a biologic. And
Mhm.
so Mason would be on like Remicade, he would be on methotrexate and a steroid all at the same time. And that's pretty popular. I think that's the steroids are not great long-term treatment though. It's
No.
usually like a bridge,
Like prednisone, that stunts growth, right?
it does, and we'll go
Yeah.
more a little bit more into that, but you're exactly right. So, for kids especially, that's why steroids should not be used for long term.
For adults, of course, there's still gonna be
There's still other
downsides
side
of it.
effects that are not that great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but when
but
you're a grown up, you don't have to worry about growing because
yeah.
if you're an adult, you're already
You're
to
already
your max
yeah,
height.
you've already
Yeah.
reached that. So for kids, it's a big concern. But a
Mhm.
lot of you listening who've had this disease for 20, 30, 40 years, and you probably are very familiar with the use of steroids because that's with surgery or steroids, there was not these other options that are available now
Mhm.
to
Yeah,
our
I'm so
kids
thankful that
and
we
to
have
adults.
actually more options now.
It's really a good thing, and the goal is for certain biologics is every 8 weeks, and that's the majority of them. There are things like Humira that are given every 2 weeks because it's a different dosage and that's what's necessary.
It says Humira.
Right, and other ones, though, are every 8 weeks. You're gonna hear a lot of people, though, say it didn't work for them at 8 weeks, just like with Mason, it didn't work, and so
Actually, I'm on my infusion. It got changed, so now we're
mhm.
going every 6 weeks
Right.
for
Fingers
infusion.
crossed.
Yes,
Like, we're hoping
hoping it
we'll
works.
be able to try it. They're gonna do that and run some levels on him and more tests to see if it's recommended to continue on that
So we're
path.
trying
So,
to make the jump.
yeah, probably the next couple months, we're gonna make that
Mhm.
adjustment. So, right now, though, he's every 4 weeks for both biologics that he's on, and typically, they would like to get you to 8 weeks, but some people, it's just never possible.
You can't get there for some
Yeah,
people.
it just it's difficult to do. So some will be on 6 weeks, some will be on 4 weeks, and but what that means is this was something that's frustrating for Mason, is that when you are on a biologic every 4 weeks versus 8 weeks, it suppresses your immune system
So
like
actually,
double.
I was gonna say that when you have two biologics, it does have good causes. It's helping your disease,
Yeah.
but then the downside is the more you go to get these biologics,
Mhm.
they're getting them more often into your system. So your immune system
Takes a
is
hit.
yeah, it's gonna get
Mhm.
suppressed a lot more. So it's harder to go
Right,
places.
and I don't know the exact science, maybe a doctor's listening saying
Yeah,
could tell you that, but we just know that it's even more difficult, like, for Mason, currently, there's 2 weeks between every treatment, and so that means if you were to get sick, you don't have a lot of time to recover
no,
between treatments versus someone who gets it every 8 weeks. So, really, the goal for everybody is 1 biologic every 8 weeks. That would be in a perfect world, which is still imperfect. In a perfect, imperfect world, 8 weeks. But that's just kind of a goal. So, when we're referring to dual biologics, what we're gonna be talking about from here on out is 2 biologics used at the same time to treat IBD. However, we are gonna be discussing how they can be used to treat something else in
yeah,
tandem, which is kind of a cool
it's
effect
another
too
cool
that they
effect.
can do.
It's a good combo.
So, just to give like a couple quick facts, we found from the University of Chicago Medicine, the FDA approved the first targeted biologic therapy for Crohn's disease in 1998.
Crazy. Yeah, for medically speaking, that's pretty recent.
Mm-hmm. And the second 2 biologics came about in 2007, 2008, so almost 10 years later. There was, like, almost a 10-year gap to get to the 2nd and the 3rd. And
It's
so
crazy because if the first one didn't work for you, there were no other choices.
right, it was just kind of putting these Band-Aids all over these problems and surgeries. It was a lot of a lot of people ended up getting bagged up and getting, intestine removed, getting resections and things like that. So this is a huge advancement for the treatment of this
Mhm.
disease. Around the same time, around 2007, we found at the National Library of Medicine that the first study demonstrating the safety of dual biologic therapy was published, and that was in
Because that was the
2007.
first time there were actually more
There
than
was more
one.
than one,
So they
right.
were able to
So
test with
at
more than
that
one.
point, somebody had the idea like, aha, like, okay, well, what would happen if we were to use two of
Two.
these together?
Mhm.
And so they did start researching it that back in 2007. And something else from the National Library of Medicine that we found is that because there's so much chronic inflammation from IBD. You relapse, and it's just like it can really do a lot of damage consistently. It's constantly. So these biologics, what they're trying to do is just hold back that inflammation, hold back that damage. And so you have
Healthier intestines,
healthier intestine.
healthier
Yeah.
guts.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And by finding a disease course that can help, it can help reduce significant complications, and it can also reduce morbidity. And so it's very essential to find maintenance therapy that will keep these guys healthy and keep them in good shape for as long as possible. It also would help reduce, there's other things like strictures, fistulas, abscesses, surgical resections, things like that, that these biologics help you avoid. The thing is, though, is that they know in the National Library of Medicine that while there is well established experienced national guidance for different types of maintenance therapies, the use of dual biologics is difficult to find a lot of research on because,
It's so recent and being
yeah,
studied.
right. So there's still little research and a lot of long term data on these, and that is something that we need to continue to work on because it's important for the research to be there. So, like, when a doctor wants to put Mason on it, then they have the resources to say to insurance,
Yeah, maybe insurance, we wouldn't have to deal with that as much because they'd understand the
you
reason
think,
for yeah,
you
you'd
think
think.
they understand, but
It's
money
just
is
too
a,
it's a bit expensive.
yeah, but it's important to continue to do this research because when there isn't a lot out there for a doctor to pull from and say this would help my patient, so you end up having like guinea pigs or these people that have to kind of experiment with this, and it kind of just feels like that. I mean, that's what it felt like even on one biologic with you. It was like, let's try it and hope it works. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, because with Crohn's,
There's no real way
like
to
we
know.
said, like she said, there is no way to know what biologic is gonna work, which
Yep.
maybe with more testing in different areas, you can figure out, if they have this sort of cell or this other thing with their blood,
Whatever it
maybe they'll
is,
be like,
yeah,
"Well,
they
because
can.
of this biological work or because
Yeah.
of this," so you don't have to go through the
Instead of having to
trial.
try it and then
Yeah.
finding out, oh, this kind does not work for you, but then find, oh, this one does. And then, oh no, what if it stops working? You want to know your other options. One of the things we were kind of mentioned earlier was how dual biologics can help more than just Crohn's disease. So, like for Mason, what's interesting, and I don't know if there's a tie with this at all, because, like, not a scientist, but Mason had severe joint pain as one of his symptoms of Crohn's disease. He was diagnosed with peripheral arthritis. And when he started taking the Stelara, the first thing it helped
Was
was the
arthro
joint pain.
yeah, it was a joint pain.
Right. It
So,
went away.
even though it's was supposed to help Crohn's, which it did,
Yeah.
it also helped the arthritis.
Right, like, right away,
Yeah.
and it took a lot longer for the Crohn's to catch up, and then when you added Entyvio, that's when the big changes happened.
Mhm.
But it's important to note that, some of these biologics are used to treat other things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, ankylosing spondylitis. Again, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Besides Crohn's disease,
No, I
there's
understand.
multiple sclerosis. There's a lot of things. And so you can take these biologics sometimes to treat one thing and you can take another to treat something else. So that's why it's important to research this and find out the safety of this because maybe your Crohn's disease is under control with Entyvio, but you're still getting joint pain. So maybe by adding Stelara, you can take care of the joint
Joint
pain.
and Crohn's at the same
Right.
time.
So it's just it's important to have this research so to know how much you can add and what you can do. So you can help two different issues. So we're gonna shift gears here then since we went over all that the fun facts and all that good
Wonderful
stuff
facts.
and talk about Mason.
Yeah.
So
Oh, it's all about me now.
yeah, now it's all
Wonderful.
about you. So let's start off. We're gonna have a few more facts leading into this, Mason. So get
Yeah.
ready. So online MDPI said that IBD, and this is something we found in a lot of other resources. I'm just using theirs, but this is something I found all over that IBD is usually more severe in
Kids.
pediatric
Yeah.
patients. And because of that, children are more likely, as according to this website, to present with pancolitis, which in addition to Crohn's disease. So that's what Mason did have as well. And sometimes they're less affected by steroid treatment than adults. So
This isn't great.
no. So when the primary goal is remission for these
Mhm.
guys and maintain it, keep it in,
And
keep them in
steroids
remission.
can help.
you have to look at other options.
Mhm.
And so the other thing is Mason kind of talked about this earlier with steroids, how not growing it can
Yeah.
affect you. So it does say here in the pediatric population, again, this is the same source, treatment with corticosteroids and immunomodulatory drugs can cause long-term side effects such as growth failure, osteopenia, and pathological fractures.
That's not good.
Yeah, so all those things are difficult, especially with a child that is growing. And this is something that they don't want to leave these kids on long term because that can be very detrimental to their
The way
health, their growth, to all of that.
the way I saw steroids kinda when I was finished taking them
Mhm.
is they weren't like a treatment that I was gonna stay on, and they're not a
Yeah,
treatment. I saw them as kind of something that would kickstart me into remission, and then the biologics would take control, and then you don't need the steroids
that's
anymore.
exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the launch pad kinda,
Yeah,
help you
exactly.
get into remission.
Right. And if you go into a flare, then you can use them again
Mhm.
and then go back, stay on the biologics the whole time, but keep those to keep you in maintenance. So you are
But you don't wanna stay on them forever.
right. You don't want to stay on the steroids forever. The other thing is you can become resistant and dependent. And Mason was labeled as steroid dependent because he had been on them so long. And the doctor knew that he had to find a different method of treatment. It was not healthy, even though it was keeping the inflammation a little bit lower. It still wasn't totally helping
Mhm.
it.
It was just
But
keeping it at bay a little bit.
yeah, but the other side of it was that he's trying to grow and his bones are trying to grow stronger. And this is not a good situation. For that reason, that's why biologic therapies are now more commonly used. So, in a patient that's moderate to severe at diagnosis, this is going to be something that's going to be more recommended. I think it's just becoming more common. For Mason,
I'm on Entyvio and Stelara.
yeah, so it's vitalizumab and ustekinumab is some of the terms. I don't.
I get to say the fun names, she has to say the
Yeah,
biological
the ones
ones.
that doctors use, I just sound
Yeah.
professional. It's
Yeah,
pretty
you
cool.
sound professional.
But that's the and different people I've noticed because and the reason we say both of them is because online I've noticed different depending where you're located and depending what how your doctor discusses it, they use different terms for it.
Mhm.
So I just wanna make sure you know both terms so you know what he's on. And one is the Entyvio is given through IV,
Yeah,
and the Stelara is given through a subcutaneous injection.
injection, yeah.
Mhm.
Obviously, I like the injection more, but, I mean, they're both helping me, so I like them both.
Yeah. The injection's a lot more
Yeah.
simple, but for someone who just is starting this with this disease, having to hear they're gonna have to get an injection that much is like, ugh.
Oh,
Not something they're looking forward to. Jason's doctor said that his disease is recalcitrant, hard to treat is basically he's a hard to treat.
yay!
Yeah, and I think that's the case with a lot of you listening. You're probably going, "Yep, yep, my kid too," or "Me too," whatever. It's you're probably saying, "Yeah, you can agree with this." So when Mason was first diagnosed, he was put immediately onto Remicade and methotrexate, like we mentioned, and steroids. And he also did gut rest too. So he did TPN. He was given nutrition through a PICC line in his arm, so
Mhm,
nothing
I
went
was
into the
because I
gut.
was on gut rest,
Yep, for
for
4
4
weeks,
weeks.
and then he did a liquid diet after that, so he was just drinking liquid drinks until he started bringing the food back into the diet, and so that was kinda his first course of treatment, and they figured out pretty quickly that the which Remicade is also known as infliximab, and so that they figured out was failing him.
It wasn't really working.
No, and they even went to, like, remember it was like you were getting it within, like, a week.
Yeah, like, almost every 2
And that's
weeks
supposed to be every
or
8 weeks,
yeah,
and they immediately did, like, 2 weeks, and then a week, and then it was like,
and
"It's not working."
and the Remicade, the, Infliximab,
Mhm.
it takes 4 hours to get it.
Yeah, it
That's
took
a
hours.
long time, and to do that every week and to go to the hospital for 4 hours every week
Yeah,
and stay in a room, it's just not that fun, and especially it's not fun at all if you know it's not working.
that's the other thing. It's a lot more
'Cause if
difficult
I
when you know it's not
Yeah, because if
working.
I knew it was helping, I'd be like,
It would seem
if it
worth it.
helps,
It's
it
like,
works.
okay,
But
but
if it doesn't work,
when you're still feeling terrible and you had to leave the hospital bed,
like,
like,
I don't
4
wanna do
times to
that.
run to a bathroom, you're
I
like,
don't
"Ugh,
wanna get it.
gosh." Yeah. So and he was also on methotrexate, and so what the doctor figured out eventually is neither of them were helping. Oh, yeah.
Nothing against Remicade, it's just that
No, it's a
Crohn's is
very
different for
popular
everyone.
drug. Yeah, Yeah.
Remicade was actually the first one that came out, so thank you
Yeah,
for
to the
getting
OG.
Remicade. It just
Yeah.
didn't work for me, sadly,
No, but
but
it works for a lot of
it works
people,
for a lot of
and some
people.
people you try it and start feeling better right away, and that was our hope. We kept looking at him thinking, "Oh, maybe this is a sign that he's better." We were trying so hard to believe in it,
Yeah,
and it was like, no, it didn't work. But we eventually had to switch him to something else, and because the TNF blocker, which was Remicade, that didn't work for him, they
didn't
decided
work.
to switch to a different class of drugs. So they started with Stelara. And that, like we mentioned, that one helped right away with his
Arthritis.
arthritis and a few other symptoms that lightened it, but it took adding a second one to see full results. So dual biologics are used more for hard to treat patients. This isn't something they're just going to leap to. We're looking at the National Library of Medicine. The data on the efficacy and safety of dual biologic therapy as a treatment for Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis remains quite limited. And that's something we are just talking about. It's kind of part of the problem is that even as a parent, if you go to Google it, if they're talking about this for your child, you're not going to find a whole lot of
'Cause
information.
there's not much work on it
Yeah,
yet.
especially for kids. And so
Mhm.
most of the data is for adults, and that's even still a limited group. And so the thing is, you go down to the next level of pediatric, and it's even more a much smaller group. We'll talk about it later, but I do think it'll become more popular. I
Yeah,
do, and maybe in other forms, but we'll talk about that.
someday.
But yeah, so for Mason, they mentioned, "Let's put him on Entyvio," and my mind immediately went to, "This is too much." He's already getting 4 weeks, he's getting twice the dosage of Stelara, and now we're gonna add this, and it just seemed
Crazy.
crazy.
Yeah,
And then, it's kinda like people remind you to fear the disease more than the treatment. And I know that sounds kinda it doesn't sound great, but
yeah,
it just means that the disease is doing so much damage, that that is what you should be fearing. And there will
more.
be potential side effects, there's potential unknowns, but the knowns are that Crohn's disease will destroy. There's other scary
Yeah,
side
there
effects,
is.
but they're very small percentages, a
Mhm.
very small percentage
Like, there's a less
versus
of a chance of that happening than
right,
Crohn's causing something
right. And
else.
the Crohn's is progressive.
Yeah,
It's gonna get worse.
because by the
And
time you're
so,
not treating it, Crohn's can get worse, and it can become really hard to treat,
yeah,
and
it can cause
steroids.
a lot of issues. So yeah. So that's something that's important to think about. And he's went on Tibia, which is vitalizumab. So that one he also went, they took him from 8 weeks to 4 weeks. So now he's on Stelara 4 weeks. Now he's on Entyvio 4 weeks. And
Going to the hospital every 2
yeah,
weeks.
and then he was still on steroids. Remember, you're still on
Mhm.
steroids. And the
Yeah, he
doctor
takes
though
steroids.
wanted to get him off. So as soon as he was on both biologics,
He started to wean
they started
off
right.
the,
And that took about
yeah,
4 months to successfully get him off steroids, and he did.
and we
And
did it
so that was
successfully.
really exciting. So then we're just left with the 2 biologics, and he has gone into lab remission. He is doing really well. There's other options. We want to avoid surgery because with Crohn's disease, surgery is not going to solve it. I
Mm-mm.
see some people just say, just take everything out, give me a bag, and then I don't have to deal with this anymore.
That's
And it's like,
colitis.
that could be colitis. Right, right. That's more ulcerative colitis has a different way they
Treat it.
can treat it or heal it, I guess you would say. And Crohn's, though, does not. It can attack anywhere else. So just taking out the part that is inflamed isn't going to solve it. So that's why this is so important. And yeah, we were very nervous. I don't think anybody ever feels like comfortable
Mhm.
doing this, but we
Yeah, to be
trusted
on
his
dual
doctor,
biologics.
or you trust your
Oh, I
doctor.
do.
And it's important that Mason has that trust. We have that trust. We can ask any questions. And, that the other thing was, it was a bit of a fight to
Mhm.
get this because
Insurance doesn't like dual biologics
no, they didn't even
or
like one
biologics.
biologic.
It's
Yeah,
a fight
so
to get one biologic,
yeah, they're
especially
like,
because of
"Oh
the
gosh."
cost.
Yeah, so now it's like they want 2, and so that's where the research comes in because she had to show why Mason
Needed
needed
it.
it. And now that he has been successful with this, we do have the proof that for him,
Say, hey, look, it
it did
worked.
work.
So
Yeah,
that's proof. He's doing fine. He doesn't need any more.
yeah.
He doesn't need steroids. He's doing great.
Yeah, and for
That's good
s
proof.
and for some people, someone out there might have already done this combo and it's like it didn't work for you. But I don't think that's necessarily strange because I think with this disease, it's like expect the unexpected with it because we were kind of saying, and I think we've talked about it's so different for everybody. This disease is there's certain things that are all the same, like symptoms and things you guys all go through. But the ways you're all treated can really be different. And some people, if they say that they can just use dietary changes, they can take a certain, vitamin or prebiotic. There's other people who just use immunomodulators. Some people just use steroids. It's so how come this disease isn't treated like why is there not just one answer?
Why is it different for everyone?
Why is it different for everyone? And so I think that as they get more into this in the future and find out the actual root cause for this disease and like the individual, like looking at Mason's biological makeup and say, okay, what is causing this? So why is Mason able to have success with Entyvio and Stelara, and a friend of his is able to have success with Remicade? And so it's interesting to me how this is treated. And so I think it makes sense from a standpoint of taking 2 different classes of drugs because Entyvio is in a different class than Stelara,
Stelara.
and it's in a different class than Remicade, and so
Mhm.
if you take something from 2 different classes, it makes sense that maybe the one fought part of the issue Mason was having
'Cause if
with
they were both
Crohn's.
from the same class, that they would just be fighting the same thing. But if they're
Right, it'd
both
be
from different
redundant.
classes, they're coming from different
Right.
angles
They're
and
fighting
yeah,
differently. And so I think that it does make sense that there will be different therapies in the future that may even combine 2 biologics
yeah,
into
or
1,
more.
or something like that. I
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even
It might
scientifically
not be
possible.
possible, but we can
Yeah.
dream.
And it's exciting because we've got to see how, like, bioscience companies work,
Mhm.
and we've got to go inside them and see how everyone does work on these projects and is trying to find these answers and trying to find these treatments and, hopefully a cure. So
That's what we all want.
right, so it's important, you guys, to keep fundraising and raising awareness and doing things to promote this research so that there is a better future for many reasons. It's, because biologists just came onto the scene in 1998. And so maybe there'll be something else here in the next 10 years that'll
It'd be
come out
amazing.
that'll be different.
And the
And
good news, if they don't find a cure from, these studies, they might find another treatment,
mhm,
which that's also good.
or a cure for something
Or
else.
a cure from something else, because
So,
yeah,
yeah, so because a lot of times things for Crohn's come from other research and other diseases or other problems like cancer.
because
And so
Remicade worked for
Remicade was developed, I believe, was developed for
yeah,
cancer,
okay.
and it ended up not being a good candidate for treating them, but it ended up being a good
Being
candidate
for
for treating
Crohn's.
Crohn's.
So it's meant for something else,
Mhm.
but it didn't work for that, but it worked for something else.
And sometimes some things are approved first for ulcerative colitis before they're approved for Crohn's.
Mhm.
It's really interesting, to look into and research this. So I encourage you guys to, if you have these questions, you have things, talk to your doctors, ask them about this. Knowledge is helpful. And having a doctor you can trust is extremely important. That's about it for
That's it for
today for about
today's
dual biologics,
episode.
and hopefully we've kind of brought you guys a little sense of comfort if there have been concerns, and
Understanding to
yeah, a little more
but
understanding
full
of
biologics.
dual biologics and what they are. And, hopefully for Mace in the future, in the near future, we're hoping to get it down to one biologic, and hopefully his that will be good enough and
That'd
he'll
be so cool.
it would be. It would. And so, and we'll see. We're going to the doctor on Tuesday. So in a few days, we'll be getting his Stelara,
Woo!
and we'll be discussing the new treatment path for him. So
That sounds like fun.
yeah. So as of right now, it looks like it'll leave 3 weeks open in between the treatments. And then you have to go 2 times in a row, unfortunately. So 2 weeks in a row,
Oh,
but you would have like a 3-week break
yeah.
instead of
3 week
just how it
break's better than
currently
a
is.
2-week break,
Yeah,
and
so it'll
yeah.
yeah, so we're trying to open up in his doctor's always trying to find a better quality of life for
And also, a
Mason.
good thing about a bigger break in between infusions is because, when we're in the hospital, they had to be careful where they put IVs, because if
Yes.
they put it in the same spot over and over
You wear
again,
out that
you
vein.
wear out that vein,
Yeah.
and then bad things can happen. So the more time spread out, in between getting an IV in the same spot, there's, less of a
There's less
risk.
damage, yeah, and
Yeah,
there's
less
less damage
damage.
on your liver and all kinds of things because that's the biologics can be hard on the body, and so it's a win for us to get any kind of reduction that
Yeah,
we can, so it's less and it while also keeping Mason healthy Crohn's wise. So it's a difficult balance, but we're working towards it and we are making progress. So that's
that's a good
that's
thing.
what's good. So All right, guys. Well, we hope you all are doing well. Hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast.
Have a
And
great new year.
yeah, hope you're still enjoying the couple
Yeah.
weeks into the new year. And we will be back again next week with a new episode. And please feel free to recommend anything you'd love to hear us talk about, any subjects. If you have any questions, let us know and feel free to comment. And you guys can follow us on Instagram at Team IB Determined. And we also have a lot of family stuff on there. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fun to see. And you can also listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere basically where they play podcasts. I put the link for Buzzsprout so you guys can see all the different icons of where we're playing and so you can find which one you prefer to listen to us on. And
Go on to YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a video, make sure you hit that bell. And here comes the guilt trip. If you haven't commented, please comment. But we have been getting comments in the
if
last few
people are still
videos.
watching this long,
Yeah,
I think maybe some
maybe
people
they
have
don't
already
watch
turned it
all the
off.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
they
So
don't hear this part.
yeah. So if you haven't, like, just say hi. Let
Yeah,
us
just
know
say
how you're
hi.
doing.
What you related with in this video, what you
Yeah.
want to see in future episodes, ideas,
Anything
what
like
brought you
that.
here, if you just want to say hi, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, please leave a comment.
Makes it worth it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because we love reading your comments and we read every one of them.
we do. All right, guys. Have a good day, good weekend, good work week, whatever time of the week you're listening to us at. Make it a
Yep.
good one. So we'll see you guys
In the next
in the next
episode.
episode.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.